Hey guys, Stealth here. In this deck review I'm looking at an Eastern Bloc general deck. So we got the Czechs, we got the Polish and we got East Germany together, which gives us a very large pool of both tanks, infantry and all sorts of interesting vehicles. Now Tom sent me this deck to ask me if I could have a look at it. Its purpose is for 2v2, 3v3 and 4v4. He says it's meant for some heavy defense, after which already takes down the enemy. Now this is not usually a gameplay style that I advocate. I try to actually push up, but of course it's not my place to dictate how you should play the game. So if he wants to dig in and arty the crap out of the enemy, then that's what we're gonna do. In logistics, he has one card of command vehicles, these command APCs, one fob and 12 colossus. If he really is doing a lot of artillery, and for that we're going to first have a look at the support category, I would expect a second fob, because with a second fob you can keep that artillery fire up a lot longer. You're going to have to sacrifice one transport for that, and I would pick the other transport either still holding the Coloss or bringing in a transport helicopter. Anyway, the artillery he has in here is the BM-27. This is pretty much the Smerch version, and the Ondava, which is a long-range howitzer, very accurate, good rate of fire. The thing I'm missing over here is mortars, because the other units that he has is a long-range anti-air launcher, a Sopol short to medium range anti-helicopter defense, and the FLA SFL 256, also known as the Tunguska. What I'm missing here is mortars. If he does want to dig in and try to engage the enemy by artillery, then I would think that mortars in this deck would have a very good place. Also, using his artillery strategy, I would not really recommend the BM-24, or the BM-27 in this case. Because the BM-27 is not a very accurate weapon. Yeah, it gives very nice visual effects. Firing off those large sprees of missiles is of course a nice bit of fireworks, but it, in my opinion, doesn't really do a lot. You don't really actually damage any units that much, or you don't really kill them. So instead I would go with some howitzers, or some mortars I should say. So I'm going to delete the BM-27, and in case, or instead of that, we're going to bring a mortar carrier, which they can only pick from is the Tunsha and the Prem S. Now comparing these, I want the one with the longest range and the best rate of fire. The problem is, they use pretty much the same mortar. The difference here is that the Prem S has a little bit more rounds, 81 versus 60, but otherwise all the specs are the same. You could have a look at the transport, if the transport is any different, but again it's the same unit, or at least it has the same specs. The Prem has a little bit more frontal armor, but mobility is the same, autonomy is the same, and of course you don't need optics on one of these. So what I would bring in here is 7 units of the Prem S. And this means that we don't need a second fob. We got the Ondava, which already carries 50 rounds of its own. He's using 2 of these, and that should be enough, especially for his goal, but then we don't need the second fob. So we're going to go back to logistics, we're going to hold this fob, we're going to delete one Coloss though. And because I'm deleting one Coloss, I can bring in another card, and I want that to be helicopters. See, what I'm doing here is having the Coloss in there, and then resupplying the Coloss from an MI6 for example. By having these guys, you don't have to send the Coloss all the way back to the fob, which on certain maps can last you a very long while. But instead you can just fly the MI6 back, get back, or take supplies and fuel from the logistics base, from the fob, land it somewhere near and somewhere near your front line, and then take the Coloss and start taking supplies from the MI6. It shortens your supply chain a little bit. Moving on to infantry, we got the Grom, the LSTR 40s, the Concours, the Nibiski Beretti 90s, and the Granatomatch AGS 17s. Interesting vehicle here is the Vedra 2, so he does that the right way. I think that he's going to use these guys in a quick land grab, seeing as they are moving in a helicopter. He's picked the cheapest helicopter. It is not the fastest though, so it depends on what you want to do with these LSTR 40s. They're pretty much the, I would like to say, improved version of the SAS, because the SAS do have some very, very nice gear, but these weapons just have slightly better specs. And if you do an early land grab with these guys, you could say that the additional speed of the Mi-24D or the Mi-24A, 330 versus 250, might just give you that extra edge. It also gives you that extra cost of 20 points or 30 points more. So it's really a bit of a trade-off. And in this case I would go with the Mi-24D, but that's completely geared towards a quick land grab, because the LSTR-40s will arrive faster over there, and the Mi-24D can still provide some fire support. So we're going to take out the Mi-8T, and we're going to give ourselves one card of LSTR-40s and Mi-24Ds. Another problem that this does create is the fact that you only get 7 of them. Now always check your availability, and unfortunately you have to choose between bringing them in an Mi-8 and thus providing yourselves with 9 LSTR-40s, or taking an Mi-24D and taking only 7. So it's a pretty significant trade-off, but I think it's worth it. Next up, he has 7 Groms in the Scott 2. You can bring the Groms in any type of vehicle. There are pretty much no wrong choices here. The question is a little bit how fast do you want them to get there, because again, an Mi-17 or an Mi-24D is a lot faster than, for example, a Scott 2. But a Scott 2 is only 10 points, whereas an Mi-24D is 55. Seeing as how he wants to do some heavy defense, as he states it, I think that they need to arrive pretty quick in order to set up a decent to solid defensive line. But you could say that the LSTR-40s can already do that with their Igla, and that it's okay for the Groms to arrive a little later. So we're just going to keep this deck choice, or this card choice, like this. Next, he has Concours. I'm not sure if these are the best anti-tank weapons available, because they got a whole load, and Russian ATGMs are not my strong suit most of the time. He has 7 of these Concours. Let's see, he got an accuracy of 45. What I'm looking for is an accuracy that's a little higher. Now I know that the Concours M can provide that fire support. They also have the Vidra transport, which is definitely worth looking into. And having more of these Vidras will give you more autocannons on the front line. Also, the Concours M, here it is, gives you a little bit more epi power versus the Concours that he has in here now with 20. They also get a bit more accuracy, so I would go with the Concours M just to give you that extra punch. Especially if you want to focus on heavy defense, I would go with the Vidra 2 and take 7 of these at trained, because that way you still have enough accuracy, you still have enough guys, and you get 7 Vidras with them instead of 7 of those lesser transports. Then he has Nebysky Berettis. These guys seem to be his general infantry. And it depends a little bit on how urbanized the map is that you're fighting on. In which case, the 14 of these guys might be enough, it might not. If you have a map like Wonsan Harbor, you might not have enough in 14 units. He cannot take them at a lower veterancy, which is something that you don't really want to do with Nebysky Berettis anyway. But let's see what the Eastern Bloc has to offer as an alternative. We got Motorschützen and Motorschützen 90. Now, they are not really my favorite because I think that they die pretty quickly. We got Motostrelkis, or Motostrelchis, maybe I should say. And then the Nebysky Beretti, the Pichota Mechanists, Spado, I'm not even going to try that. And then the Vizatkaris. I know that these guys are very, very good troops as well, especially the 90s version, so let's compare these. And I think that for his purpose, which is holding towns, the Vizatkaris can do pretty much the same job as the Nebyskis. The difference here is that they're a 15-man squad versus 10. So if you were to go with not the Nebyskis, but the Vizatkaris in, for example, an OT-64C, you also get 14 cards, so it doesn't really matter. So we're going to stick with the Nabisky Berettis over there. Just keep in mind that they have 17 AP power, which could be lacking on some tanks. Then he has 9 Granatomet AGS. So the grenade launchers, they're brought in a Vidra 2, which is something that I really like. You could take these things at hardened and they would still be okay. They will take some fire, but it shouldn't be that bad. So let's select those, the Granatomets and the Vidra, and switch them to 14. So with this you got an anti-infantry defense, you got an anti-tank defense, anti-air, which is shared between Grom and LSTR 40, and you got the Nabisky Berettis. If you find yourself using this deck and you don't have enough infantry, consider switching out the Nabisky Berettis or the Granatomets. Because while these guys are extremely good at taking out infantry, if you're fighting a lot of vehicles from, say, a motorized or a mechanized deck, you might not have enough in these Nabiskys. Support I already went over, so we're going to move straight into tanks. Delete this filter. And this is where I find something very interesting. There are no super heavies. That's not a wrong thing, but it's just something that I've never seen before. Pretty much anyone who sent me their deck has always gone with one of the super heavies, and by that I mean the Tuardi or the Moderna. And not having these in your deck represents a significant lack of armor, because they do have very heavy armor and a very high AP power weapon system, either on the Tuardi with the 22 AP power or the 23 from the T-72. He does have 12 KPZ T-21 M1s. These are definitely good tanks. They hit very hard for 80 points. T-72S, only 5 of those. Of course, they're already pretty pricey, and you can see that for 50 points more, they only get 2 AP power more on the gun, but they also get the sphere, of course, which makes up for that difference in point value. He's got the Dynas. I do like the Dynas. I really like them because of the Arcan, so we're definitely going to keep these guys in here. And then 9 T-72 M1Ms. If I compare these to the T-72 M1s, you can see the difference here is that they carry the sphere. They got a little bit more armor, but they got pretty much the same gun. That is AP damage wise, but their accuracy is slightly better. Still, I think that we need a super heavy in this deck. And with his aim of super heavy defense, I would keep these guys in at 12. So you have enough tanks to spread out over the front line. And then delete the T-72 M1M. And go with either the Tuardi or the Moderna. It depends on your personal preference. The thing with the Moderna is that you get 2 in 1. The Tuardi you get 3. And because the Tuardi is slightly more accurate, I like the Tuardi. But then again, the Moderna has this autocannon, which is extremely effective. So this is where I'm going to leave it to you guys. If you import this deck, take either the Tuardi or the Moderna. My personal preference is having 3 super heavies, so going with 3 of these guys at trained. In reconnaissance, we find the Grenzer, the Specialny Jetnotki, T-55s and the Salamandra. So he has a bit of everything, but they're all seemingly very low veterancy. So we're going to start by taking out the T-55s and taking in those at 9 hardened. Rarely do you need 14 of these guys, especially if you use them as passive spotters. You can also blend them in with the infantry, and you don't really need these guys, especially not 14 of them. Then he has 5 Salamandras, which are the highest veterancy. Now I already went over these guys as a notable unit when I was discussing the Polish deck. It's because they have a rocket pod and a Kokon. They got very good optics, and not many helicopters have this. So this is definitely a good choice. Then he has these guys, the Recon Infantry. Lately, Recon Infantry for me is just purely passive recon. I don't really use these guys in an offensive role, although of course you can, because they do have pretty good weaponry on them, especially the RPG-26 is very nice, and we carry a nice amount of ammo for those as well. but it again depends on your personal preference, how you like to play Wargame. If you like to engage in some special operations or covert operations with these guys, you can go hunting for CVs if you want to. If you just want passive spotters, I would recommend going with a lower end infantry. For example, the Grenzers. Just never ever bring them in a truck, because the truck is just too slow to deploy passive spotter infantry like this. Also, their stealth is only good, not very good, but then again they're dirt cheap, they're only 10 points. In this case I'm going to delete these guys, and I'm going to consider going with the Kampfschwimmer. The reason for this is because the Kampfschwimmer have exceptional stealth, and this could be used as a spotter behind or close to the enemy lines, whereas they will not get detected, so that they can spot for the artillery, being either the mortars or the Ondavas. So having the Kampfschwimmer in here would be a very nice addition. And again, make sure that these guys are airborne. So bring them either in Mi-28, Mi-24 or Mi-24D. The Mi-24D is the fastest transport. It's also the most heavily armed and the most expensive one. And when I see an Mi-24D, I automatically go, okay, where did the infantry go? Because these things always carry infantry. Anyway, we're going to go with 5 of those. If it turns out that you're doing a 10v10, you could go with 3 of them to make them even better. In vehicles, he's using the Concours M. This definitely suits up with his game plan of defending and then having artillery take out the enemy. These guys can of course engage anti-tank or tanks, any kind of armored unit. And with their 23 AP power and their 50 accuracy, they will have a very good chance of hitting the target. He doesn't have any other cards in here. I'm always a big fan of having a napalm tank, because you never know when these guys come in useful. But I found that having them in here is always a good thing. And then the ZSU 57-2. These things are surprisingly annoying, because they do have a very sturdy vehicle. It's the 5 frontal armor that I like. And with these guns you can chew up a lot of infantry. Especially encountering these things in woods, in high numbers, like 18 of them. That could be really annoying. So if you got a map which is heavily forested, then getting one of these cards in would work. But we're moving on to helicopters, and here we find the Sokol and the Mi-24P. Now what I'm looking for in this particular tab is a quick response force. If there's a breach in his own lines, he has to be able to fix it quickly. And that is something that helicopters in this case are very well capable of. So the helicopters that we pick have to be capable of taking down vehicles and tanks. Infantry is not so much of a problem, because those guys can be taken out very easily. But what I'm looking for is either anti-air, anti-tank or rocket pods. Right now he has the W3W Sokol and the Mi-24P. So he has a lot of AA capability on these things, but only 4 ATGMs, although they are high-end. I don't think this is enough. So what we could do is try to look for another Mi-24. Unfortunately, there aren't that many varieties available. They got the Mi-24P, which is the one that's in here. We got the Mi-24. Sorry, I should compare these so you have so you see exactly what the difference is. These Mi-24Ps are designed as interceptors. They're extremely quick, as all the Hinds, and they have the AA missile. So with these you can sometimes catch up to a plane or meet the plane where it starts to breach through your lines, and with it take it down. That, however, is not really what I'm looking for. I think that the Sokol can do that job similarly okay. The only difference is I would pick them at 5 trained. But we need a heavy end ATGM. And for that I would go with the Mi-35. You're going to sacrifice a little bit of firepower, because the Kokon M has just 2 AP power more than the Kokon. But you get 8 missiles versus 4. The helicopter's even a little cheaper. And you lose the Molnia, of course, which is unfortunate. We already got those on the Sokol. And you gain rocket pods, which is definitely a handy weapon if you're suppressing vehicles or infantry bursts through your lines. So we're going to delete the Mi-24 and we're going to take 5 Mi-35s. Come on, Mi-35s, where are you? Here. 5 of those at the hardened veterancy will allow pretty much all of those Kokons to hit. And if they hit a couple of heavy or high point vehicles or tanks, then you're going to guarantee these guys up to veterancy or even elite. Now in the air tab we find 4 planes. The MiG-25 RBF, a solid bomber this one. Carries 8 500 kilogram bombs, and that's enough to bomb pretty much anything into submission except for tanks. But even tanks will take quite a bit of damage from this and get stunned or at least panicked. So with that, it's a very, very good all-round bomber. And especially for a bomber, it carries very good ECM of 30%. Then he has an air superiority fighter. Now, air superiority fighter wise, there's not that many great planes to pick from. You got the MiG-29 913S, or you got the alternative version, which is named exactly the same. The difference is that this is a Polish plane and this is an East German plane. And the difference in weapon systems is that this one carries the Wimpel with fire and forgets, and this one carries them with semi-actives. Now it depends on your preference. I always like the FNF tag, the fire and forget, so that you can evac your own unit if you need to. The semi-active will force your MiG to stay in the arena or the missile will miss, and that means that you might not always get that hit that you were going for. Veterancy wise, it doesn't really matter. You get 2 of these at trained or 1 at elite, and the same goes for these guys. The other important difference is that the fire and forget Wimpel has a HE power of 5, whereas this one has an HE power of 6. So there again is a trade-off. But I'm going to go with the MiG-29 of the East German forces, because I really like the fire and forget. So we're going to delete this one and bring in 2 of those. Next up, Su-22M4P. This is the seed plane. Let's select all of the seed aircraft, and this shows you that there aren't that many available. We got the Su-24 MP from the Polish or the East Germans, and they fire pretty much the same weapon system, except that this one has a slightly better range of 4900, a little better accuracy. AP power is of course not something you really have to look at, because most AA vehicles don't carry any armor. And you also get the Molnia, this air-to-air missile. This seaplane carries 4 missiles, which, especially with the DLC 3 coming out in January, is a very nice addition. Because planes that have 4 missiles are going to double tap. So once they find a radar source, they're going to fire 2 missiles at it instead of 1. This could make them a little more deadly than the Mi-24P from, or Mi-22 M4P from the East Germans. But it really depends on what you're going after. And on seaplanes I really prefer the extended range, the 4900. But another trade-off when you're looking at these planes is the ECM. And with 40% ECM, the Mi-24 or the Su-22 might just be capable of staying in the arena a little longer and firing off all of those missiles, hitting more targets. So it's really a difficult trade-off for this one. But I will be going for the Su-22 M4P, so I'm going to agree with his choice in plane. And if you really wanted to get these things to pretty much guarantee a hit, you could take 1 of them at veteran, but I prefer to have 2 of them flying sorties. Finally, in the plane section there is the Seria. I'm going to have to switch this back to all. The Seria 30, very, very capable tank sniper. 50% accuracy, 30 AP power. It'll take out pretty much any tank except for the super heavies, but it'll do heavy damage to those. Now let's see if there's any other planes that we could pick from, which could be interesting. Keep in mind the Seria is classed as a multi-role, so that is where we're going to have to also look for our possible candidates. Anyway, it's not the Albatros, it's not this one, although this is classed as a ground attack aircraft. This one is a nice to have plane because it carries the napalm bombs, but it's not what we're looking for. We're not going for rocket pods, we are going for a very heavy anti-tank missile. The MiG-23BN is a possible candidate. It carries missiles which fire a little shorter range. They have same accuracy, little less AP power. You also spend a little bit less on them, but they're faster. They travel at 900 kilometers versus 750. This gives you a slight boost in survivability, because sometimes if they see you coming and they launch an interceptor, you might get this thing out in time, or you might still try and get the shot on the tank that you're going for. Whereas with the Syria, you might not be able to make it. So the MiG-23BN could be an interesting choice. Then we got the Su-22M4, which carries... sorry, I should keep this as the main plane. It carries the same missile. There is a slight difference though. This one is fire and forget. This one is semi-active. AP power is the same, accuracy is the same, but the range is less, and the semi-active tag does not make this a very attractive missile, especially not when you're comparing it to this one. And finally you got the Su-25K, which does carry 4 of these, but again they're semi-active. Doesn't make them a bad plane, because they also carry these S-24B rocket pods, which is very, very deadly on these planes. But it depends a little bit on your personal preference. For now, I'm going to go with his choice of the Su-22 M4 Seria 30, because I think that these planes are the best suited to his deck and his probable playstyle of defending. So that if you see a super heavy coming at you, you can quickly snipe it with these things and make sure that your defensive line can hold. Let's see if he has anything in Naval. He has 4 Hujians, 4 Tarantulas, 2 Balls, and 2 Faibaos. And of course 3 Munas, but I'm only looking at offensive units. I find it an interesting choice that again someone brings both ships and an anti-ship battery. I would say either or. Either go full anti-ship batteries or full ships. Because at some point your Tarantulas and your Hujians will be operating far enough away so that the ball can no longer support them. And seeing that this anti-ship missile launcher has a range of 5.6 kilometers, that is pretty quick that they're going to get out of range. Also the Faibaos are in here. This is something that I would agree with, because they can be used both versus planes and ships. I know they're mostly geared towards ship warfare with this very, very ship-to-ship or anti-ship missile. But they also carry the PL-11. And this air-to-air missile can be used to take down other fighters and air superiority fighters or anti-ship planes. But again, it's a pretty pricey way of doing business. What I would do here, I would keep the Hujians because they are definitely a worthy ship. They got good seaways on them. Tarantulas also got good seaways. And if you compare these, you're going to see that they both carry ship-to-ship missiles. And that both makes them capable of defeating enemy ships. But what I'm lacking here is a command ship. And with the introduction of DLC 3, you're going to have a command ship in here. Because some maps now have a naval zone, which is worth a lot of points. Gunboat Diplomacy has it, another D-Day in Paradise has it. And with those changes, you're going to want to have something to capture those zones. And seeing that some of those zones have islands, you could say, well, maybe command infantry would be capable. Yeah, they would be, but he doesn't have any. So in that situation, I'm going to delete the balls, which is a very strange thing to say, I might add. And we're going to bring the Jiangyu 3s. 3 of these at Rookie or 2 at Hardened. But I think 3 of them at Rookie is definitely well enough, especially if you escort them with Tarantulas and Hujians. The Faibaos, you could say, are redundant, but they could be used to sneak up on a plane, or sneak up on a ship, which your other ships might not be capable of catching. You could keep it in here, and for now I'm going to leave it in, but if you find yourself using a lot of ship-to-ship fights, I would switch it out, because it's going to be
kind of difficult to coordinate these things at exactly the right time as your ship-to-ship missiles launched by the other ships. And you could either take another card of Jiangyu 3s, you could take a card of some of the super ships like the Udaloy or the Sovremeni, and just go to town with those main guns. But again, for now I'm going to leave it in. So this is the Eastern Bloc General deck. It was sent in by Tom. I hope you like it. If you do, please click that like button below the video. If you have any changes you would make, let me know in the comments down below. Keep in mind, the deck goal here is to defend and have artillery take down the enemy. I don't want to have any comments down below saying, wow, what a camper, I don't want to play with this guy, I hate these people. That's not the aim here. Just see what you can do different or better about this deck. If you want to use it, the deck import code is in the description below. And if you want more of these videos, just subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and see you next video.